I still remember the exact moment I met Tiago. It was at this international street food festival downtown on one of those golden late summer afternoons where everything smells like cinnamon spices and fried dough. I was there with my roommate Bridget, bouncing from booth to booth, rating everything we tried like we were judges on a food show. And then we stumbled upon his stand. He was selling pastries from his home country somewhere in South America. I'm not going to say where exactly to keep this story a little anonymous. But what I will say is that I noticed him before I noticed the food. Tall, sun-kissed skin, messy hair that actually looked good. Messy and this quiet confidence. His accent was beautiful, warm, soft, inviting. While I was waiting for my order, he struck up a conversation, said he liked my laugh. I blushed so hard I nearly dropped my churro. And when he handed me the box of pastries, there was a napkin inside with his number scribbled on it. I remember giggling like a teenager, showing it to Bridget and saying, "Tell me this isn't straight out of a rom-com." We started texting that night. He was funny, sweet, and charming in a way that didn't feel rehearsed, and within a few days we were on our first date, sitting on the Riverwalk eating street tacos and talking about everything from family to music to our wildest dreams. He told me he'd only been in the US for a few years, still figuring things out. Said he was trying to get a more stable job, but visas made things complicated. I listened, I understood. I was raised by a single mom. I know what it means to work hard just to stay afloat. I told him about my own life, about my small apartment that I'm actually proud of because I've been fully supporting myself since I was 20. I work in office administration, not glamorous, but it pays the bills. And I've always been upfront about the fact that I have bigger plans. This job is a stepping stone, not the destination. The first few weeks with him were honestly beautiful. He'd bring me little things, coffee flowers, playlists he'd made for me. He made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I'd been through some tough breakups in the past, and he was the first guy who made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I could build something real. After about a month, he started spending the night more often, then more nights, then every night. I didn't even realize how fast it happened until one day I opened a drawer and noticed all my socks were pushed to the side to make room for his. His stuff was everywhere, shoes by the door, charger by the bed, his shampoo in my shower. At first, it felt cozy, like we were playing house. I didn't question it because I thought, this is what love looks like, right? But then came the first little red flag, the kind you don't even notice because you've already painted the whole thing red. I realized he never once offered to chip in for rent or utilities. I told myself, it's okay, he's looking for work, he's trying. And when I finally brought it up gently around month 3, he gave me this long sigh and said, "You know how hard it is with my visa? It's not like I'm being lazy." And honestly, I believed him. I wanted to believe him. But then the comments started. Tiny Things said half-jokingly, "You're so American. Women from my country don't swear so much. You're a little loud when you laugh." At first, I laughed it off. Cultural differences, I told myself, but the comments didn't stop. They just got sharper. "You wouldn't survive in my country. Women there know when to be quiet. Is that what you're wearing? It's very American. You're so emotional. That's the problem with American girls. Too sensitive, and still I stayed. I excused it all because he'd kiss my forehead and say I was beautiful right after. Because I wanted to believe he loved me. Because I didn't want to start over again. Because I thought if I just tried harder, things would go back to the way they were in the beginning. Meanwhile, I was working 9-hour shifts, coming home to find him still in his pajamas, sitting at my desk, playing video games. He'd look up and ask, "What's for dinner?" And I'd make dinner and tell myself this was just a phase, just a rough patch. That I wasn't being taken for granted, that he cared. But some nights when I'd lie in bed listening to him snore beside me, something inside me would whisper, "This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like love." I ignored that voice for months, drowned it in excuses and romantic memories, but it never stopped whispering. And one night it screamed. It was supposed to be a special night. Tiago told me his parents were visiting from out of town and he wanted to have them over for dinner. I remember being nervous, but also excited. I thought maybe this was a step forward, a sign that we were getting more serious, that I mattered enough to be introduced to his family. He gave me a list of things to keep in mind. Don't joke too much, don't interrupt, be polite, traditional values, that kind of thing. And I took it seriously. I spent hours cleaning my apartment, cooking not 1 but 3 dishes, including one from his culture that I had to learn from scratch. I burned my hand making the sauce, but it didn't matter. I just wanted to make a good impression. They arrived at 7:00 p.m. sharp. His mom gave me a stiff smile. His dad nodded once. That was the extent of their warmth. They spoke mostly in their native language, which I don't speak. At first, I assumed it was just easier for them, but even when we sat down to eat, even when I tried to make conversation, they barely responded. Tiago would occasionally translate something vague. They're talking about a cousin, some old family friend. I smiled through it, nodded, laughed at the right moments, pretended to belong. Halfway through dinner, I realized I forgot to grab cream and lemons for the dessert I had planned. I told Tiago I'd run to the corner store. Everyone nodded politely. I stepped out into the cool night air, thinking about how well the night was going. 15 minutes later, I walked back in. They were still speaking in their language. Nothing seemed out of place. But the next morning, as I stood in the kitchen making coffee, something pulled at my memory, something I'd completely forgotten about: the cameras. I had installed 2 small security cameras in my apartment after a break-in over a year ago, one in the living room, one in the kitchen. Nothing hidden, just regular visible cameras for peace of mind. And suddenly I realized I could listen to what they said when I wasn't home. At first, I hesitated. Was that wrong? Was I invading their privacy? But this was my home. They were sitting at my table in my apartment, eating the food I cooked. I opened the security app, fast-forwarded to 8:30 p.m., the exact moment I left. It started off normal. They were eating, still chatting in their language. I couldn't understand a word. But something about their body language felt different. Sharper, crueler. Tiago's mom gestured toward the kitchen. His dad laughed. Tiago leaned back, arms folded, smiling like he was proud of something. I couldn't take it. I downloaded the audio clip and uploaded it to a transcription service I've used for work. An hour later, I got the English transcript, and my world shattered. Tiago's mom had said, "She's not very pretty, but she cleans up well. At least she knows her place." His dad added, "She's like a free housekeeper. Smart choice, son." And Tiago laughed and said, "She's useful. Apartment's always clean, food's always ready." American girls are so easy to manipulate. Just make them feel guilty about asking for anything, and they'll give you everything. They mocked my appearance, my job, my cooking, my home. They laughed at how easily I gave everything: my love, my space, my time. And Tiago didn't stop them. He didn't defend me. He joined in. I sat on the floor of my kitchen for what felt like hours, holding my phone in my shaking hands, replaying that moment over and over. Every little offhand comment he'd made in the past few months suddenly had a new meaning. Every time he made me feel too American, too loud, too emotional, it all clicked. He never respected me. I wasn't his girlfriend. I was his maid, his free ride, a project he could exploit. And the worst part, I had worked so hard to impress people who didn't even see me as human. I'd burned my hand cooking for a woman who called me a cleaning girl. I had apologized to the man who mocked my laugh and weaponized guilt to get what he wanted. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, hollow. He was still sleeping in my bed at that moment, peaceful, dreaming, probably oblivious to the fact that I now knew everything. Part of me wanted to scream, to shake him awake and force him to listen. Another part of me wanted to disappear, erase myself from the whole humiliating narrative. Instead, I just stood there quietly with my coffee growing cold in my hand. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I only knew this: I couldn't unhear what I had heard, and there was no going back. He was still in the shower when I decided. I sat in the kitchen, phone in hand, stomach tight, eyes locked on the screen showing that ugly little transcript. I had read it so many times that the words no longer even felt real, more like stabs from a past life. But it was real. It happened. They said those things. He laughed, and I had let that man sleep in my bed. I waited until I heard the water turn off. That sound, normally so insignificant, suddenly felt like the starting gun in a race. I didn't know I was about to run. I got up, walked to the bedroom, and opened the cabinet under the sink, pulled out 2 of those heavy-duty black trash bags. I didn't hesitate. I didn't cry. I just started shoving his clothes, his shoes, his stupid gaming headset, that cologne I secretly hated, but never told him I didn't even fold anything. Just tossed it all in like it was garbage, because honestly, it felt like it was. I found the little box I'd made of our memories. Polaroids from our first weekend trip, a ticket stub from a rooftop movie, a dumb photo booth strip from a night out. I stared at them for a beat, then tore them all in half and threw them in the bag too. I was halfway through his drawer when he walked in. Barefoot, wet hair, dripping towel wrapped around his waist. He froze. His eyes darted to the bags, then to me. "What? What are you doing?" My silence must have scared him more than yelling would have. He took a step forward. "Babe, what's going on? Did something happen?" I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't feel love or even anger. I felt clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. "I know what you said," I told him. My voice was calm. Too calm. He blinked. What last night, after I went to the store, I have it all recorded, the cameras, the conversation I got, it translated. The blood drained from his face like a tide going out. He opened his mouth, stammering, it was a misunderstanding. You must have misread it. There's cultural nuance. Humor, my parents, I cut him off. Don't insult my intelligence. You called me your maid. A free housekeeper. You laughed when your mother said I wasn't pretty, but at least I knew my place. You said American girls are easy to manipulate. He didn't deny it this time, just stared at me with this dull panic in his eyes, and then he snapped. You were spying on me. That's what this is. You invaded my privacy. I actually laughed, a short, bitter laugh, in my own home. You sat in my living room at my table and trashed me in a language you thought I couldn't understand. You don't get to play the victim here. He lunged toward me, not in a full-out attack, but enough to grab my wrist hard. Stop being dramatic, he barked. You're overreacting. This is why women from my country are better. They don't act hysterical over every little thing. That was the moment I snapped. I ripped my wrist from his grip so fast his nails scraped my skin. My heart was pounding, but my voice was ice. You have 20 minutes to get dressed, take your bags, and leave my apartment, or I'm calling the police. He stared at me like he didn't recognize who I was anymore. Good, because I didn't recognize myself these past few months either. He started yelling, called me ungrateful, said I'd never find someone like him again, that I was nothing without him, that I'd beg for him to come back. I pointed at the door. He stormed out of his room, then came back dressed a few minutes later, still seething. Knocked over a table on his way out just for effect. My neighbor across the hall peeked out to see what the noise was, and I just nodded. Like, yeah, it's exactly what it looks like. Once the door slammed shut, I sat on the floor for a long time. My wrist ached. My heart hurt more. Not because I missed him, but because I hated that I let it go this far, that I ignored the signs, that I let him chip away at my confidence like it was nothing. Later that afternoon, I called a locksmith. Cost me $270 for emergency service, but every time I turned that new key in the lock, I felt a little more in control again. He started texting that night. First it was, you're making a mistake, then I need to come back for my charger. Then the guilt trips, you knew my situation, I loved you, you're cruel. I didn't respond. Bridget came over with wine and Chinese food. She sat next to me on the couch while I showed her the video and translation. She was shaking with rage, and then she just quietly said, I'm proud of you. For the first time in weeks, I believed it. The first night alone in my apartment after Tiago left, I couldn't sleep. Every little sound made me flinch. I kept checking the locks, the windows, my phone just waiting. Not for him, but for the next wave of whatever chaos he'd decide to send my way, and it came the texts, the missed calls. The emails first, it was guilt-tripping. I have nowhere to go. You know my situation. Then accusations. You're cold. You're heartless. I did everything for you. Then the let's just talk routine like we could solve everything over coffee and pretend the last few months never happened. I blocked him on everything. Phone, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, even LinkedIn. That felt ridiculous, but also necessary. I just wanted to breathe without hearing from him. By the third day, he showed up at my apartment. Knocked on my door, called my name. I didn't answer. I watched him through the peephole frozen. When he left, I packed a bag and went to stay with Bridget. She let me crash on her couch, no questions asked, just warmth and food and quiet support. She brought me tea. She made me laugh. She also helped me delete every single picture of him on my phone, and when I hesitated, she took the phone from my hand and did it for me. That was the first night I slept through without waking up panicked. 3 days later, I went home to grab a few things and found a letter under my door. No return address, just my name. It was his handwriting. He wrote about how sorry he was, how I'd misunderstood everything, how I was too sensitive and too American to grasp cultural humor, and then the twist, I forgive you for hurting me. That line made my skin crawl. Bridget told me I needed to talk to someone more official. She was right. I called my building manager and explained the situation. Then I contacted the police. I didn't press charges yet, but I started the process to file a restraining order. The officer I spoke to was kind. She told me to document everything, every message, every attempt to contact me, every voicemail. I bought a notebook and labeled it Tiago Evidence. That's how real this had gotten. Then came the workplace incident. It was a regular Tuesday. I was in a meeting when I glanced toward the front of the office and saw him, Tiago, standing at the reception desk, trying to talk his way in. I froze. I texted the building security guy, Ron, who thankfully appeared within seconds. Tiago was getting loud, telling the receptionist he just wanted 5 minutes. accusing me of being childish, irrational. Then, when he saw me hiding behind a column, everything changed. He got loud, angry, accusatory, said I ruined his life, that I turned everyone against him, that I was already moving on with some guy from work. He actually tried to lunge past security, had to be physically removed from the building while yelling that I'd regret this, that this wasn't over. It took 3 people to drag him out. That was the last straw. I called the police again, filed the full report, started the official restraining order process. The next day, Tiago's cousin messaged me again. Apparently, after the office incident, he spiraled, started drinking, posting cryptic, angry stories on social media about betrayal and revenge. His parents, finally embarrassed, booked him a one-way flight back to his country, gave him an ultimatum: go home or be completely cut off. I prayed he'd take the flight. Meanwhile, I started therapy. My therapist, Lisa, was soft-spoken but sharp. She didn't let me deflect. She asked hard questions like, why do you think you didn't listen to your gut? And what does being chosen mean to you? Turns out I had work to do on self-worth, on boundaries, on recognizing manipulation dressed up as romance. But for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt rebuilding. That weekend, I went back to my parents' house for dinner. My mom hugged me like she hadn't seen me in years. My dad stayed quiet, but squeezed my shoulder the way he always does when he doesn't know what to say. Then they dropped the bomb. Tiago had shown up at their house, told them I was unstable, said I'd attacked him, showed them a scratch on his face, and called me paranoid. My mom had her doubts, but she needed to hear from me, so I told them everything. The dinner, the transcript, the recording, the bruise on my wrist, the workplace scene, and then I showed them. My mom's face turned from concern to pure rage. My dad, he stood up, grabbed his keys, and left. 2 hours later, he came back calm but firm. He had gone to find Tiago, told him if he ever came near me or our family again, there would be consequences. I think that was the first night I felt truly safe in weeks, safe and finally ready to move forward. It's been almost 2 weeks since Tiago last showed his face, and for the first time in months, I can finally breathe. After the disaster at my office, the shouting, the crying, the literal attempted swing at one of my coworkers, he went completely off the rails. According to his cousin, he was couch hopping, getting kicked out of places, showing up drunk and blasting angry posts on Instagram. I wouldn't know firsthand. I was already blocked, but friends sent screenshots, just enough for me to feel validated and sick all over again. Then came the news I didn't realize I was waiting for. His parents were forcing him to fly back to his home country. They gave him an ultimatum: get on the plane or be completely cut off. No more money, no more enabling. His cousin said he finally agreed. I still didn't believe it until I got the text. He's on the flight. It just took off. That night, I sat in my apartment lights, dim lavender candle burning my favorite lo-fi playlist in the background, and I just existed. It was quiet, so beautifully, gloriously quiet. No more pacing, no more door knocks, no more checking peepholes, inboxes, locks, shadows. Just me and my second chance. That weekend, I did something small but symbolic. I went shopping. Not for clothes or makeup, but for throw pillows and plants. I bought these ridiculous burnt orange velvet pillows. I'd never let myself splurge on a monstera for the corner near the balcony. A tiny aloe plant for the windowsill in the bathroom. I rearranged furniture I deep cleaned. I saged the entire place. Even though Bridget says it's super woo-woo, I didn't care. I needed to reclaim every square inch of this space. My space from his energy. I started journaling too. My therapist suggested it. At first, I rolled my eyes. Sounded too Pinterest, but it helped. Somehow, putting everything on paper made it feel less like chaos and more like clarity. One night, I read through everything I'd written, and one line stopped me cold. I feel like I was chosen because I didn't know how to say no. That hit hard because, yeah, I didn't know how to say no to manipulation disguised as love, to guilt dressed up as partnership, to criticism camouflaged as cultural differences. But I do now. I know what red flags look like. I know what silence means. I know that if someone makes you feel like you have to earn love every single day, you're not in a relationship, you're in a performance. And I'm done performing. I've also made a list, not a bucket list, a boundaries list, a living, breathing document of what I will and will not allow in future relationships. At the top, if he makes you feel small, walk away, no matter how big his smile is. Meanwhile, work's been a blessing. My boss in HR helped implement extra security just in case. Tiago tried anything before his flight. Ron, our building guard, even walks me to my car sometimes just to be safe. I didn't ask. He just does it, and Marcus, the coworker who nearly got punched, he checks in. Not in a flirty way, just kind, consistent. No pressure. The kind of presence that doesn't demand anything from you, the kind that feels like exhaling. I'm not ready to date, not even close. But knowing there are still good men in the world, that's enough for now. Last week, I went back to my parents' house again. Not because I needed refuge, just because I wanted to bring my mom some flowers. We sat in the kitchen drinking tea, talking about everything and nothing. At one point, she said quietly, "You seem lighter." I smiled, "I am, and I meant it. I don't know what's next. Maybe I'll finally apply for that project coordinator role at work. Maybe I'll sign up for the ceramics class Bridget keeps pestering me about. Maybe I'll just keep going to therapy and building something better out of what's left of me. All I know is this: I'm not who I was 8 months ago. And thank God for that. Now it's your turn. If you were me, what would you have done? Would you have confronted him, packed his bags, called the police sooner, or stayed a little longer, just to see if maybe he'd change? Let me know, because somewhere out there another woman might be going through what I just survived, and maybe your voice will be the one that helps her find hers.